There's a force inside you that can create life. Literally. It can generate a complete human being. It can manifest cells, bones, consciousness, an entire body from a single impulse. This force is not metaphor. It's not symbolism. It's real biological power. And Thoth, in the halls of Amenti, taught something about this force that was deliberately erased from public tradition. He said, "The same energy that creates external life can create internal life. The same power that generates a child can regenerate the parent, but only if it's conserved, only if it's transmuted, only if it's consciously redirected." In this video, you're going to discover why Thoth called sexual energy the astral fluid of the soul, how ancient Egyptians, Hindus, and Buddhists used sexual transmutation as a path to ascension, and why wasting this force is not just physical loss, but spiritual leakage. But before I reveal the hermetic protocol for transmutation, you need to understand something modern culture has completely inverted. You were taught that release is healthy, that retention is repression. But Thoth taught the opposite. He said, constant release is waste of creative power. Conscious retention is accumulation of vital force. And there's a reason this knowledge was suppressed. Thoth the Atlantean, who mastered the forces of life and death, taught something in the Egyptian mystery schools that few comprehended. He said, everything in the universe operates under the law of polarity. To create, you must destroy. To gain, you must sacrifice. When you plant a seed, the seed must die for the tree to be born. When you build a business, you sacrifice time, energy, attention. When you create anything, something is consumed in the process. And the same is true for biological creation. When you release your sexual energy, you are literally destroying a part of yourself to create an extension of yourself. And Thoth revealed, this energy is not just physical, it contains layers. Physical layer, minerals, proteins, zinc, selenium, all the elements that compose your body. Vital layer, the force that animates, that energizes, that keeps your nerves functioning, your brain alert, your muscles strong. Astral layer, memory, emotion, psychic patterns, fragments of consciousness. And spiritual layer, DNA, blueprint, code, the essence that can generate new life. When you release this, you're not just losing fluid, you're losing vital force across multiple dimensions. Think about that for a second. If this energy can create an entire human being, imagine what it can create within you if it's conserved. Thoth taught that we live in a mental universe. Everything begins as thought. Thought descends to imagination, which is astral force. Imagination energizes with emotion, which is etheric force. And emotion finally materializes in physical action. And the same process happens with sexual energy. It's not merely physical, it carries astral impressions, emotional patterns, mental intentions. This is why the ancients called semen the astral fluid of the soul, because it feeds the channels of vital force, the meridians, the nadis, the pathways through which consciousness flows through the body. And every time you release, you're draining these channels, emptying the reserves, weakening the system. Thoth warned, if you constantly release this force, you will always operate with low reserves, like an engine running on insufficient fuel, and this manifests in ways you don't even notice. Lack of mental clarity, difficulty concentrating, blocked creativity, dropping motivation, low physical energy, weakened presence, and spiritually, leaking force, difficulty meditating, inability to access elevated states of consciousness, because the energy that should rise to the higher centers is being constantly drained through the lower centers. But there's something even deeper happening. Every time you release sexual energy, your brain is flooded with dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure, of reinforcement, of reward. And dopamine is how your brain says, you did something important, you conquered, you succeeded. But here's the problem. An orgasm releases more dopamine than anything else you can experience naturally, more than food, more than achievement, more than social recognition. It's the absolute peak of human pleasure. And if you're hitting that peak every day or multiple times per week, your brain is receiving the message, you've already conquered the maximum, you've already reached the top. So why strive? Why work hard? Why persist through difficult things? Your reward system has already been satisfied. And Thoth taught, the one who constantly seeks the peak of pleasure becomes a slave to pleasure. And slaves don't create. Slaves consume. When you conserve this energy, when you don't prematurely trigger the reward system, something shifts. You become unsatisfied, restless, motivated. And this dissatisfaction isn't bad. It's fuel. It's what makes you wake up early. It's what makes you persist. It's what makes you create. If you've already felt this, if you've noticed that the more you release, the less motivated you become, write in the comments, I conserve my force. Now comes something that alchemists knew but rarely spoke about publicly. Thoth taught that inside every human being exist two minds, the higher mind and the lower mind. The higher mind seeks the eternal, wisdom, love, truth, knowledge, connection with the divine. The lower mind seeks the temporary, physical pleasure, external validation, material accumulation, immediate sensations, and both are constantly competing for dominance. And here's the symbol few understand. Baphomet, the figure with goat head and horns. Why horns? Because horns represent the lower mind, animal instincts, bestial nature. Thoth said, when you operate from the lower mind, you are guided by instincts, by the pursuit of immediate pleasure, by satisfaction of the senses. But when you master the lower mind, when you transmute the impulses, when you elevate the energy instead of wasting it, then the higher mind takes command. And from the higher mind come ideas, visions, creativity, clarity. All the great masters, all the creative geniuses, all the spiritual leaders throughout history had something in common. They mastered sexual energy, not through violent repression, but through conscious transmutation. And this is not religious morality. It's spiritual technology. Here's something few realize. When you're constantly thinking about sex, when your mind is occupied with lust, with fantasies, with impulses, you're using mental bandwidth, cognitive space, attention energy. And this energy is not available for other things. Thoth taught, the mind is like a radio antenna. It picks up frequencies, and depending on where you tune your attention, these are the frequencies you receive. If your mind is constantly tuned to low frequencies, carnal desires, physical pleasures, then that's what your antenna captures. And low-level thoughts, low-level ideas, low-level motivations flood your consciousness. But when you clear the lower mind, when you remove sexual obsession, when you free up the bandwidth, something happens. The antenna tunes to higher frequencies, and suddenly you have ideas you didn't have before, insights that arise from nowhere, solutions that appear spontaneously. Some call this downloads, intuition, inspiration, but Thoth knew what it really was. It's the higher mind finally being able to communicate because the lower mind is no longer shouting. And now comes the alchemical part. Thoth taught the law of correspondence. As above, so below. To create a physical child, you need to unite masculine and feminine, sperm and egg. Opposite polarities meet and generate new life. But this same law operates at all levels. To create anything, you need to unite internal polarities. Internal masculine, will, action, initiative, direction. Internal feminine, emotion, imagination, receptivity, nurturing. When you unite will with emotion, when you combine action with imagination, when you align intention with feeling, you give birth to reality, you manifest. And sexual energy is the fuel for this process, but only if it's conserved, only if it's transmuted, only if it's redirected toward internal creation instead of external release. Medieval alchemists spoke about turning lead into gold, but they weren't talking about metals. They were talking about transmuting raw sexual energy, the lead, into refined consciousness, the gold. Thoth taught something crucial in the halls of Amenti. He said, before you die physically, you must kill your attachments, because when you die, your physical body is gone, but your consciousness remains. And your consciousness still carries the patterns, the desires, the addictions you fed during life. If you lived obsessed with sex, with food, with material pleasures, then after death, you will still have these desires, but you won't have a body to satisfy them. And this creates suffering in the astral plane, hunger without mouth, desire without form, impulse without release. This is why Hindus taught detachment, why Buddhists taught renunciation, why ancient Egyptians underwent purification before entering temples, not for external morality, but for spiritual necessity. Thoth said, "The one who masters their desires in life crosses death in peace. The one who is dominated by their desires in life crosses death in torment. And the greatest of physical desires is the sexual one. So mastering this is not about repression. It's about liberation. Liberation from the cycle of desire, temporary satisfaction, desire again." But there's another level even deeper. Thoth taught that when you have sexual relations with someone, you're not just exchanging physical fluids, you're exchanging electromagnetic energy, emotional patterns, astral impressions, fragments of consciousness. Modern science has already proven when two people touch, their brain waves synchronize, their heart rhythms align, their electromagnetic fields merge, and that's just touch. During sex, the exchange is exponentially deeper. Your aura, which is not just an electromagnetic field, but the external manifestation of your consciousness, merges with the other person's aura. And consciousness contains everything: thoughts, beliefs, traumas, emotional patterns, memories, even past lives. When you sexually unite with someone, you are literally absorbing part of their consciousness, and they are absorbing part of yours. Thoth warned, if you unite casually, if you treat this exchange as entertainment, you will be carrying consciousness fragments from multiple people, and this creates internal confusion, energetic distortion, astral pollution. This is why the ancients were so selective, why mystical traditions emphasized sacred union, single partner, deep commitment, not for moral control, but for spiritual hygiene. Now, I'm not saying you should never release, that you should never have relations, that you should live in eternal celibacy. Thoth didn't teach extremes, he taught balance. If you have a committed partner, if there's genuine love, if the exchange is conscious and sacred, then the union can be elevating, it can be ritual, it can be portal. But casual, frequent, unconscious release, that drains, that empties, that weakens. And pornography, that's pure poison. You're literally sitting in the corner of your room watching other people exchange pleasure while you drain yourself alone. Psychologically, this programs submission, voyeurism, passivity. Energetically, this creates astral ties with images, with frequencies, with entities that are not beneficial. And everything you do in darkness, everything you practice in secret, eventually reveals itself in your posture, in your eye contact, in your presence, in your energy. People feel it. Even without knowing rationally, they feel it. So what do you do now? Now that you know sexual energy is not just biological impulse, but creative force that can be transmuted, Thoth left a protocol. Simple but powerful. For the next 30 days, practice continence. No release. Observe the impulses without acting on them. And every morning upon waking, before anything else, do this exercise. Sit in silence. Breathe deeply 3 times. And then visualize the sexual energy, which normally descends and exits through the lower centers, rising up the spine. Feel it ascending, passing through the abdomen, through the heart, through the throat, to the forehead, to the top of the head. And there, at the top, it transforms. From raw sexual energy into creative light. Don't force it. Just imagine, visualize, feel. Do this for just 3 minutes every morning. And Thoth guaranteed, at the end of 30 days, you will notice changes. More physical energy, more mental clarity, more presence, more magnetism, more creativity. And spiritually, you will begin accessing states that were previously blocked because the energy that was being wasted is now being transmuted. There's a final truth that Thoth revealed only to the most advanced initiates. He said, sexual energy is the most powerful force in the human being because it is literally the power to create life. And whoever masters this force masters life itself. Not through violent repression, but through conscious transmutation. Alchemists called this the great work, transforming lead into gold, mortal into immortal, bestial into divine. And the fuel for this transformation always was, always will be, transmuted sexual energy. Not wasted, not repressed, but consciously redirected toward higher creation. Thoth taught, "You have within you the force that creates universes, but only if you learn to conserve it, to transmute it, to use it consciously." And the one who masters this doesn't just create better externally. He recreates himself internally. He regenerates, he rejuvenates, he ascends. And if something inside you recognized these words, if something in your soul resonated with this truth, leave a sign in the comments. Just write, "I transmute my force," because that's the recognition, that's the decision. That's how you tell the universe, "I understand. I am not a slave to impulses. I am master of my creative energy." Thoth the Atlantean, who mastered all forces of nature including sexual force, taught that the path of ascension is not through denying the body, but through mastering it, not through repressing energy, but through transmuting it, not through escaping creative force, but through consciously redirecting it, as Thoth taught, as the initiates of the halls of Amenti practiced. The energy that creates external life can recreate internal life. The power that generates child can regenerate parent, but only if it's conserved. Only if it's transmuted, only if it's used with wisdom. You have the choice. Waste creative force on momentary pleasures, or conserve it, transmute it, and use it to create the highest version of yourself. Thoth left the map. Walking it is your responsibility.